One stock which used to be market's darling, still is for a lot of people, is Bajaj Auto. But if you compare the year-to-date chart of Bajaj Auto with either Hero Honda, Hero MotoCorp now, or Eicher Motors, you would see that there is distinct underperformance. This year, Bajaj Auto is up 32%, which is in absolute terms still good, but relative to Hero MotoCorp, there's 20% underperformance, and relative to Eicher Motors, of course, there's quite a bit of underperformance. Last week, Bajaj Auto held an analyst meet, which was a comprehensive analyst meet, and we got a lot of feedback from that. So, to discuss all those issues, Rajiv Bajaj, MD of Bajaj Auto, now joins us. Rajiv, hi, good morning. Always good to talk to you. Now, one thing which a lot of analysts said they were pleased about was that that Bajaj Auto has admitted that some of the brands in different positioning are actually confusing the market. Is that something that we are likely to see a change in the stance of Bajaj Auto from now to say next 6 months or so?
Well, I don't know what exactly they meant, because in matters like this, what one says and what one hears can sometimes be a little different. But I don't think we made any such admission from what I'm understanding from what you're saying right now. We, in fact, in terms of our motorcycle business, and I assume you're referring to the domestic motorcycle business, essentially shared our plans with them towards the purpose of first taking our market share up to about 24% sometime over the next year. And then, of course, we would like to go on further from there. So that was the objective we shared with them. And in terms of the means towards that end, simplistically, I can put it in two parts, and this is what we said to them. One, the new products that we would introduce under two of our existing brands, one the Platina and the other is the Pulsar. And we actually showed them the new Platina that we have not showed outside so far. We also showed them 4 Pulsars, 2 of which have not been publicly shown so far. So we showed them a total of 5 new models under these 2 brands. So in fact, rightly or wrongly, we showed them more and more products. So I don't know how they can say that we were actually thinking of pulling back on that. The other thing we shared with them was the fact that we are in the process of developing 2 new brands which don't exist in the domestic market today, and that these would be introduced again, say over the next 12 months. So we tried to convey as best as we could the basis for all of this. But what they have taken out of it individually is very important.
Okay, so Rajiv, actually I was reading a report from Kotak which said that the company believes that the key reason for failure of Discover 100 and 125cc was confused positioning. And actually my follow-up question on that is that, Sonia tells me that Discover 150 is doing quite well. Why would you then launch a 100cc variant again, Discover 100? Wouldn't that be confusing? Isn't that something that's actually hurting Bajaj Auto?
Yeah, let's talk specifically about that, because I think this needs to be clarified time and again before people can understand what we are saying. Whether they agree with us or not is a different matter. What we have said that day in terms of Discover is that Discover was always positioned as a 125cc motorcycle that offered more than just A to B commuting. It was not just a mileage bike, it was a mileage bike that was also fun to ride. And this served us very well from the first time it was introduced in 2004. It is also a reality that the Discover 100 has been in the marketplace since 2005. And if you were to only look at the numbers since 2005, you would see that that has done exceptionally well as well. What we said on that day with respect to the Discover as a brand, and this I have said on your channel before, is that where we have erred is in not producing 100 or not. That is not the issue. The issue has been how we have communicated the brand. And in recent years, we have spent too much of advertising money trying to promote Discover as a 100cc brand. And I think in hindsight, as a result of that, that has taken some of the sheen off that brand, because its USP, its differentiation in the marketplace was that it's not a 100cc brand, it offers something more than 100cc. So, in effect, what I'm trying to say is, the issue is not how many SKUs are there in the dealership. I have said this before, in fact, to Sonia in more than one conversation, that look at the Splendor, look at the Pulsar, look at the Activa. Let's speak about, there are so many SKUs under each of these brands. Try buying a TV or a mobile phone. The showrooms are flooded with SKUs. The issue is not sales. The issue is marketing. And Discover as a brand was marketed as being something superior to the 100cc. I think where we have gone wrong with the Discover is to put the 100 up front, and I think we have corrected that now by going to market with the 150 Discover, which you're very right in suggesting has taken off well, is doing well, and it is only a matter of time before we restore Discover to its intended original position of being a commuter bike that is much more than just mileage. So I think that process is underway, and we are seeing the early benefits of that.
Okay, fair enough, Rajiv. So if you're targeting a 6% increase in your market share in the coming year, give us a sense in terms of how this would translate in terms of average volumes or a run rate amongst all of your brands in the coming year. What are you targeting internally?
Sure. See, the market size today, the domestic motorcycle market size is a little more than 900,000 motorcycles. And we have between 18 and 19% share of that. If we wish to get to 24% market share, we need to clock about 220,000 motorcycles every month. So this is how we are looking at that. We expect that with the launch of the new Platina, which is now just about 4 to 6 weeks away, we can see ourselves growing Platina volumes, or the volumes in the M1 segment, as we call it, to a level of about 80,000 motorcycles a month, let's say 2 months after launch. So if we were to be speaking in April, and if our confidence is not misplaced, we should be up to that kind of a volume in the Platina segment. So that's about 80,000 bikes a month. On the Discover segment, we are seeing ourselves at about 70,000 motorcycles a month. Thanks to the new 150. So that is about 150,000 bikes. And finally, on the Pulsar segment, where we do currently in the domestic market about 65,000 motorcycles a month, we expect to grow that also to about 75,000 motorcycles a month on the back of the new Pulsars that we showed. These will also be introduced progressively over the next quarter. And that is why we would like to believe that, say, 6 months from now, we should be around that 24% target that I had actually shared with your colleagues a couple of months back.
Okay, so let's get back to the M1 segment again, Rajiv, because 2 points. One is that 50% of the market was already self-start. So do you think you were a bit late in that? And B, why are you moving away from your own stated strategy of moving up the value chain, or moving customers up the value chain by actually introducing 2 bikes in this particular segment?
The strategy is unchanged, I think. I'll tell you why. Because today, if we were to simply divide the market into 100cc and greater than 100cc, you have a 60-40 split. 60% of the people are still buying the 100cc motorcycle, but 40% are willing to move up. For the 40% that are willing to move up, we already have a Pulsar and a Discover. And as I just mentioned, and as we mentioned that day to the people who were here, we are in the process of developing another brand for that end of the market. In other words, for 40% of the market, Bajaj will now have not just 2 brands, but 3 very soon.
Okay.
In the balance 60% of the market, which is the 100cc market, we have, as of now, just 1 brand, which is Platina. We have always focused on the higher end of the market, always given it priority, because that is what is good for top line and bottom line. Having said that, if 60% of the people are still buying a 100cc motorcycle, and in 3 years' time, let's say this will be 50%, I don't think Bajaj will get to the 30% plus market share it wants to in the domestic marketplace on the back of just 1 brand, which is the Platina. Because ultimately, every brand stands for a given attribute, a given USP in the marketplace. In our view, the USP for the Platina is its mileage. But there might be customers who are looking for another USP. And I'm not going to say what that is right now, that would be saying too much. But on that basis, on the basis of that USP, if we were to introduce a second brand into the marketplace, I think that is going to help us have a better impact and a better presence in the market, which today is 60% of the industry size.
Okay. Rajiv, I just wanted to ask you about, your domestic strategy before we get to the export order and your Sri Lankan order, which you've just won. Based on the repositioning that you're undertaking at this point in time and, maybe the higher advertising that we could see or more aggressive advertising we could see if that's the case, will that impact your margins in any way, and how would you even sustain your margins if in case you have to invest more in repositioning?
Sure. First let me make the point that it's about 5 years now that, we've had our own share of ups and downs. There are things that have worked for us, and sometimes every now and then we have an initiative like the Exceed or more recently trouble with a brand like Discover that doesn't work for us. Despite all of that, for the last 5 years now, and I think that's a considerable period of time, we managed to stay in the 20% EBITDA zone, more or less. We've not strayed very far from there. So I think it's about time you gave it to us that our business strategy is so robust. And this is what I say to my own colleagues at Bajaj Auto, that it's true that while everything else is working for us, both in the domestic and export market, it is true that we have a problem, a bit of a problem with the Discover. However, we are still a company that is growing and that is recording a 20% EBITDA. So it just shows how robust the strategy is. Just because one pillar is a little shaky, the whole building doesn't shake. Now, on that basis, I would say that when we go forward and we put in new brands, we are going to do it with the same approach, with the same strategy that we have created, Pulsar and Discover and Platina so far, which is quite simply in marketing lingo, creating not just new products, but creating products that create categories in the marketplace. Because when you do that, two things happen. One, you have pricing power, and that is why a Pulsar or a Discover or a Platina is sold at par with its relevant competition in the marketplace in terms of price. And two, you don't have to spend a lot of money in advertising or promotions or subventions and that kind of stuff. So I don't see any issue for the bottom line going forward, any inimical effect to the bottom line at all. Sure, the marketing spends will go up, but then so also will the top line. So in percentage terms, I don't see any change being anticipated. Okay,
Rajiv, we'll talk about exports also, but just a word on, one more brand extension, the Pulsar 400cc. Do you think, by extending the Pulsar brand, you can compete with Royal Enfield in the premium category? We've seen, a big re-rating in Eicher Motor stock because of what's happened with Royal Enfield. Do you think that's a market in which you have a footing or you can get a footing?
Well, yes and no, to be very honest, because I don't think people buy CCs. So just because a Pulsar is a 400cc, somebody who buys a 350 or 500cc Royal Enfield will necessarily come over. I think that is too simplistic. But I will say this. On the other hand, if there are 25 or 30,000 people buying a Royal Enfield out there, I'm equally unconvinced that all of them buy it because it's a retro or classic looking motorcycle that, as my good friend Siddharth says, offers easy riding. I don't think that is the case either. I just see a bunch of people there, for example, living out of Pune. I see a lot of college students who are very proud to ride a Royal Enfield. Now, some of them undoubtedly would want to stay with that, but some of them may be doing that because they have no other choice. I mean, what's the choices in the marketplace? A Yamaha R15 or a Honda CBR 150, that just doesn't cut it. That is too pedestrian for them. So if people were to come across the choice of the motorcycles we showed at the Auto Expo, which were the Super Sport 400 and the Cruiser Sport 400, Sure, some of them would say, hey, instead of this, for a similar price, I'm willing to move to that. Now, whether that will be 5% of Royal Enfield or 50% of Royal Enfield, frankly, only time will tell.
Okay. Now tell us about this order from Sri Lanka for your export market. And you said in your management meet as well that exports are on a strong footing. It's going to be maybe stronger in the next 3 to 5 years. Tell us about the Sri Lankan order in specific, and what can we expect in FY15 in terms of a percentage growth from the export market for Bajaj?
Well, the Sri Lankan order, I think, is the less important of the two issues here, in the sense that if I remember right, we have already received and executed a order of about 50,000 motorcycles. They were all the Discover 125. So at least the Sri Lankans love the Discover so far. But the second part is more gratifying, which is that we have a repeat order of about 100 or 125,000, I'm not exactly sure, which we will be executing in the next few months. So that is very nice. We obviously appreciate that business. Having said that, that's a one-time thing. We will execute that by April. But what is more important is the kind of growth we are seeing in all our major export markets. And I will share with you the summary that we put forth that day with our guests, which is that we have entered 29 new markets over the last 12 months or so for our motorcycles and our three-wheelers, 15 for the motorcycles, if I remember right, and 14 for the three-wheelers. We have started shipments to all these markets. So we are very hopeful, whether it's the markets of Argentina and Mexico on motorcycles or other markets for three-wheelers like the Philippines. We are very hopeful that these are going to be the new growth engines for exports going into the future, and that's why we said to them that in a 4 to 5 year time frame, we expect to double our exports from the very high base at which it is out today.
Okay, Rajiv, one final question then. What's the latest update from Nigeria? Were you able to pass on the impact because of the currency devaluation? And because, this is important because this may impact some more countries as well, given the way, the dollar has been behaving of late.
Yes, the fact is that as I had spoken aloud, if I may say so that day, some of this was to be passed on in terms of a retail price increase that has been already done. Some of it was to be absorbed by the distributors, that has been done. Some of it was to be absorbed by Bajaj in terms of a reduction in FOB. But we were fortunate, we didn't have to do anything. So I can confirm to you that the FOB price of the motorcycle and three-wheeler remains unchanged. And we don't think the retail price...
And that hasn't impacted your margins, or that hasn't impacted your market share at all?
Well, I can't say anything so far, because if the price has been increased just about 10 days back, for me to give you an accurate and honest answer, I must wait at least a month to see if there has been an impact. But so far, I can tell you there is no visible impact. Okay,
Rajiv, one quick last word question in yes or no. Have you ruled out an entry into the scooter segment forever, or is it just till you maybe, assess the motorcycle strategy?
I will answer this question for the 100th time if you promise not to ask me the 101st time.
Okay, fair enough. So I assume that's a no, Rajiv. Thanks very much for joining in and talking to us.